Welcome, everybody, to the Early Wedge, powered to you, as always, by SportsLine. I am the counselor, and the coach is, well, he's at the Super Bowl. He's doing really awesome things with a lot of the SportsLine crew, so I'm going to be your host today, and we've got an amazing tournament, the WM Phoenix. It is an absolutely packed field. We'll bring up the Caesars odds board right now and check out who we have at the top. I mean, listen. This is does the season start today? I don't know. You could argue it because John Rahm, Rory McIlroy, Scotty Scheffler, Colin Morikawa, Xander, all at the top. And then you got young gun Tom Kim, Tony Finau. This is a stacked board. This is going to be a very, very interesting tournament. But enough about that. Let's bring in some of the stars of the show. I think I'm still a star of the show, even though I'm hosting. We've got, of course, Patrick McDonald and a newcomer to this show, The Early Wedge, EC, otherwise known as Eric Cohen, who, for the record, is 10 minutes away from TPC Scottsdale as we speak. Eric, how you doing? And welcome to the show.
Well, Counselor, I'm glad to be here. It's a lot of fun to be on the show. For those Early Edge in 5 viewers, they know how much I really wanted to be a part of this, so really glad to join you and Patrick. This is my home tournament. I mean, I'm 10 minutes down the road, as you said. I'll be out there tomorrow. I'll be out there on Friday, maybe Saturday. It is an absolute blast. If you guys haven't been, this is one you have to put on the bucket list going forward.
Yeah, and for those of you that don't know, I've already told Eric that I'm crashing his house next year for the WM Phoenix. Maybe I'll get my own hotel room. We'll see. But I will be seeing EC at the WM next year. And listen, here's the thing. To be on this show, EC, you have to get all of your picks right, and then we're going to invite you back. Every single one. So everybody tail EC, because when the pressure's on, we know he comes through. Speaking of pressure, we've got amateur status, which is an ironic name, of course. We know it's Patrick McDonald. He is nothing short of elite, certainly not an amateur. Patrick, how you doing? Are you looking forward to this tournament?
What's going on, gang? I'm kind of geeking out with EC. I mean, he's bringing the energy early. I like him on the show. Don't tell Coach. I know there's a little animosity between them, but Sia, I like you in the captaincy as well. And yeah, I'm pumped. Like you said, some could argue this is the beginning of the PGA Tour season. It's been a good month for us kind of with the start of the show. Brendan Todd last week at Pebble Beach came close to us, our second runner-up already. We're going to get into the green this week, I think, and pumped to talk about the Phoenix Open.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is last week it was so kind of random, right? We knew because of a 3-course rotation it was going to be random in some weather, but it really got even more variant and random than anybody would have anticipated with how everything went down with the Monday finish. But listen, we're going to get to our bets. But before we do that, obviously, we get to the storylines before we get to the betting lines. So, EC, let me start with you. We're going into this tournament. It does feel like kind of the first like really big tournament of this season, frankly. What do you got your eye on?
All right, there are two things that I like here, Sia. Number one is I believe that in this tournament, the cream will rise to the top. I mean, with all the, it's a major like field, with all the top guns, forget the live guys. But outside of that, I mean, you've got 24 of the top 25 in the OWGR playing. I think Will Zalatoris is the only one that skipped it this week. I mean, really great field. So are we going to see a big name winner? With my picks, I'm going to the top of the board, or top 15 of the board, let's say. I just don't see a long shot winning this year. And secondly, one thing that I love about TPC Scottsdale are the final 6 holes. I think the first 12 holes, to be honest with you, aren't that exciting. I mean, just like any other PGA Tour stop, there's nothing really that great. But the final 6 are so intriguing. You look at 13. It's a long par 5 that is reachable in 2 for some. Not really much many hazards. So it's an eagleable hole if you can reach it in 2. 14, when I played the course a few years ago, I thought it was the most difficult hole on the course. It is a long par 4, and the wind, at least when I played, was straight in my face. Played like a 525-yard hole. It's a long one. That one's a tricky one. You make par, move along. 15 is a big risk-reward hole. You've got some water on your second shot. If you want to take out that 5-wood or 3-wood and go for it, you better be careful because you might end up in the water and ruin your hopes. Or if you make it on the green, you could make eagle. 16 is what everybody talks about. I think it's the most overrated hole probably in golf. It's really a nothing par 3. I mean, it's fine. It's 160 yards and whatnot, but they turn it into a stadium, and it's really an interesting experience from somebody who sat there twice last year. And saw Sam Ryder's hole in one. It was interesting. 17 is one of the great holes in golf, one of the great finishing holes or towards the end. When you have a 320-yard par 4, It cost Xander Schauffele in 2021 when he hit it in the water off the tee, and Brooks Koepka ended up winning. But there's been one hole-in-one on 17 all time, and that's Andrew McGee way back in the day. Will players go for it with water on the left side? And then 18 hit it long over the water, and you have an 8-9 iron or wedge into the green, and it's a potential birdie hole. So a lot to be excited about. A lot of wild swings in the final 6 holes at TPC Scottsdale.
I absolutely love it. And it's interesting, Patrick, because we're talking about the elite field in this tournament, right? And we're talking about Rory McIlroy. We're talking about Jon Rahm. And then people want to, they want to bet Colin Morikawa, which makes sense. Xander Schauffele, who appears to not have a back injury like we were kind of concerned about last month. But there's a name that people aren't really talking about. Who is that?
It's pretty baffling to me that no one's bringing up Scottie Scheffler. I think with the public perception of this two-man battle atop the world of golf, Rahm versus Rory, like you said, we're forgetting about world number 2, defending champion. This kind of started Scottie Scheffler's run last spring. He won 4 out of the last of his 6 events. So it's going to be a lot of Scottie Scheffler title defenses here in the next couple months. And it's not like he's playing bad. I mean, since the St. Jude Championship, in 8 starts, he has 4 podium finishes, only 1 finish worse than T11. That's when he put in a new putter at the CJ Cup, and he's the defending champion. So I understand, Rahm has won a few times on the DP World Tour. Rory's won a few times on the DP World Tour. My argument could be you could probably stick Scottie Scheffler on the DP World Tour, and he would win a couple of those events as well. So just don't sleep on Scottie Scheffler. I don't agree with that. The odds should be, nearly double of Rahm and Rory, especially being the defending champion. So I wouldn't be surprised if he successfully defends this week.
I totally agree. I think it's something to look out for in DFS, which we're going to get to in a second. Listen, my storyline is pretty basic. This is just such an exciting time for golf because we have now gotten to a time where we've got a full field and we've got major talent atop of the field. So I'm just really curious to see, is this season going to be, hey, we've got about 15 to 20 guys that really are going to contend every single week in these talented fields? Or are there going to be some guys just like last year that emerge and become part of the conversations? Like last year, maybe a Cameron Young, for example, late in the year, a Tom Kim. I think we're going to see that emergence from guys that we don't really know what their talent level is quite yet. So I'm really intrigued to see if guys like Scottie Scheffler and Rory, of course, they're going to stay on top to some degree, but who sort of cracks that barrier and jumps into the conversation once we get to June, July. And I think that all starts today. And speaking of starting today, we've got DFS that starts tomorrow with all of our bets, right? So we go through for those of you that are new to the show, 2 things. 1, hit the like button if you're watching us on YouTube, which I believe is the only way you can really watch this show. This is a YouTube exclusive. So hit the like button, retweet this show, whatever you got to do. It certainly helps the show quite a bit. And it helps the Cohen heads, the Eric Cohen, the EC supporters. I see a Cohen head from Josh Kukala. So you got a lot of fans in the chat, Eric, which is awesome to see. And Eric, I'm going to go to you first. I want to talk about maybe 3 of the picks that you like in DFS and maybe somebody you're fading this week at the WM Phoenix Open.
Well, see, I went to DraftKings and I put together my lineups earlier this week. And the first name that stuck out to me was JT Poston at 7,300. He's played here 4 times. He has all top 40s and no lower than 21st in his last 4 starts. I'm telling you, this is a guy, I know he hasn't won in a while, I feel like, on the PGA Tour. It's been a couple of years. Was it John Deere a few years ago, I believe, if my memory serves me correctly? But this is a guy that just has an affinity for TPC Scottsdale. He's a guy at 7,300. You can get him on the cheap. I think he has to be in a lot of lineups there. Another guy that hasn't played very much lately, but he finished 6th here last year. I have him on my season-long fantasy golf team, and he's top 5 in his last 3 starts, which have all been kind of spread out over the last 3 months. And that's Alex Noren, who's making his first stateside start of 2023. He's a guy that he's never won on the PGA Tour, but he's due. And he's a guy that maybe a few weeks at the Honda Classic, he breaks through. One of these days, Alex Noren's going to be a winner on the PGA Tour. And at 7,600, that's great value. And a guy that loves desert golf and 9,200 is not cheap, but Sung J M, top 40 here 3 times. And he's done very well up at TPC Summerlin, which is a similar track to what we see down here at TPC Scottsdale. Now, my fade. Now, this is a common theme that you'll notice throughout the show. I'm fading Victor Hovland. First of all, what kind of a debacle was that on Sunday, Monday, at Pebble Beach. I mean, you're the biggest name on the leaderboard. You should win, right? Like, you're 2 shots back. Justin Rose is past his prime. You should shoot 66 and win, right? No, couldn't even find him on the leaderboard at the end. And he's has 2 missed cuts in both appearances here. Fade. I do not expect him to make it to the weekend.
Patrick, it sounds like somebody had Victor Hovland in his DFS lineups last week. Listen, I had Victor as well, not in DFS, but I had him in the outright market. It was a live bet, to be honest with you, that I made Saturday night. And he just couldn't get the putter going. And we know how that works, right? You can't get the putter going, you get frustrated, and then all of a sudden the wheels come off. But Patrick, let's move to your DFS plays and fades.
I'm on the brink of tears with EC. Like, what the hell are you doing, Victor Hovland? You're world number 11. Figure it out.
Exactly.
I'm gonna go to the clearance rack. It served us well the past couple of weeks. We had a good time at the Farmers. Joseph Bramlett played well for us at Pebble Beach. So I like the trend we're going with. And I'm going to start with Russell Henley at 7,400, around 5%, I think. And since the renovation, he has 4 top 35 finishes, T15 in 2019. His ball striking was kind of so-so in the Hawaii swing. He's only played twice this year, but it's on the trajectory of kind of peaking, I think. And I think this is a really good spot for him. And then JJ Spawn at 7,300. I think just because he missed the cut at the Farmers that we're forgetting how good he is playing. He played well at Sony Open, played well at Tournament of Champions as well. This is a guy who's played well here in the past as well. So 3 for 3, including a T4 in 2017. And then we're going back to the well with Brendan Steele. We liked him at the Farmers. He obviously faded over the weekend. Ended up finishing, I think, T20. He's striking it beautifully. He's a great driver of the golf ball, familiar with these parts of the country. So I like him at 7,200. And then my fade is, I like that we're both fading him. This will either turn out very well or very poorly for us. But it is Tony Finau at $10,000. Or I think he's 10,100. And for me, the course history is a bit concerning, and he hasn't putted these greens very well in the past. I understand what he's doing from tee to green. And some of his putting numbers, I think, are skewed a little bit just because at Torrey Pines, we didn't get that one round. And that certainly did not pass the eye test for me when he was playing on the North Course. So he's an easy person to fade of all the people above 10K.
Yeah, and I'll start there with my plays. I'm going to fade Tony Finau as well. And you said it so well, Patrick, at the very end, because you talked about the easiest guy to fade. Listen, it's not like we hate any of these guys, but you can't choose them all. And because Tony Finau is carrying some ownership, he's not the most popular guy by any means. He's not even close to guys like Rahm, for example, but he is, he's probably going to end up between 15 and 17%. And I'm just not interested paying that price, which you're right, Patrick, it is 10,100. Not interested in paying that price for Tony Finau. And I agree with the eye test as it relates to the other guys in this range. So that's my fade. And by the way, before I get to my plays, you see Mike McClure is in this chat. And he just dropped his DFS player pool on everybody. So check that out. Obviously, you can, hopefully everybody watching is a member of SportsLine, because not only does he drop his golf picks, but he drops his NFL picks, MLB, tennis, NBA, you name the sport, and Mike's got it covered. So make sure you're a member of SportsLine. It really is the best deal across sports betting, across this industry. My 3 plays, Colin Morikawa at 9,700. Listen, this is a ball striker's course, in my opinion, and Colin Morikawa he's a ball striker, but he's come very close over his last few tournaments, top 6ing or better over the last 3. Probably should have one of those as a win. Not as worried about the putter on this course as I might be. I mean, listen, he can get hot with the putter, but I'm not as worried about Colin or really any bad putters on this particular track. So I'm hoping we can get a spike putter with Colin Morikawa. Corey Connors, another one of those guys that, listen, great ball striker. He's basically discount Colin Morikawa, very discount Colin Morikawa, but nonetheless, he's got to get hot with the putter, but I love the ball striking. I think this is a nice price. And I think in this range, people are going to go elsewhere. There's some popular names in that upper 7K range that I think people are going to gravitate to, or they're just going to get rid of the upper 7K range altogether and go to the low 7K range so that they can build with 2 elite guys up top. So I think Corey Connors is somewhat sneaky, perhaps not very sneaky as Keith Mitchell at 7,400. We saw what he did last week. We know he's a great course fit. He's a monster off the tee. The approach game is coming together, and we know he can have a spike putting performance. So I say he's kind of not sneaky, because I think the secret is out on Keith Mitchell, at least as it relates to the Phoenix Open. This is a guy that really could do really well and might be featured in our long shot plays teaser at the end of the show. Perhaps when we talk about, I don't know, maybe some first round leaders. If you guys are interested in that, let me know in the chat and we'll do some first round leaders for you. But listen, we got to get to the bread and butter, right? We got to get to head-to-heads, top 20s, and those types of bets. But before we do that, we're going to hear a message from our partners.
Golf's top stars and one of the most electric atmospheres on the PGA Tour, the WM Phoenix Open, this weekend on CBS.
We are back. This is the early wedge powered by SportsLine. Still getting used to saying that name. I do kind of love it, though. Early edge, early wedge. Absolutely clever. Whoever came up with that, I can't remember. Hopefully you have gotten your $100 for, if you haven't, let us know for sure. But for naming this show, very, very clever. Okay, let's get into some clever head-to-head plays. Again, for those of you that are new to betting on golf, this is kind of where you win your money. Listen, we love to hit outrights, and we're going to get to that in a second. We love to hit first-round leaders and even top 20s. But I think this is really where you win your money, whether it's pre-tournament or in tournament. And again, in tournament, there's a lot to be said for some profitable because you get more information, right? After the tournament starts, you get more information. I'll tell you, I'll be on the Friday show. I always give out a couple of golf picks on the 10 a.m. early edge Big Pick Energy show. So definitely stay tuned for that. But listen, let's start with EC. Let's start with you. Let's start with a couple of, you have two head-to-head picks here, a couple of heavy hitters. Who do you got?
Yeah, well, I'm just trying to find any sports book that'll fade Viktor Hovland, and but especially with guys that I have some bets on. So I'm starting with Cam Young at -120. I think he was 25th here in his first time last year. We saw what he did overseas last week. You always worry about the flights, you know, the jet lag thing from Saudi Arabia to Scottsdale. Now, I can't really tell you what the distance is and how long a flight that is because I'll never be taking it. But I'll trust that he'll be okay and ready to go. And I think he's going to play well here. I think he's definitely – I mean, if I don't think Victor makes the weekend, Cam Young's going to beat him. And JT, as much as I know, Patrick, you do not like JT, I do. JT is, spoiler alert, my top pick this weekend. I know he doesn't have a top 10, as you wrote in your SportsLine article, since, what, last summer, something like that?
Canadian Open, full field, yeah.
Yeah, Canadian Open. Well, you know what? The full field top 10. He's due for one. That's what I like to say. And anything, and especially him over Viktor Hovland. I don't like laying -138, honestly, but anything to fade Hovland, especially for a guy I think is going to win. Let's go.
All right. So we are on, or at least EC is on the fade Hovland train. Listen, that's pretty good consistency in the sense that if he's right about Hovland, a lot of these bets come in, a lot of these DFS plays and fades come in. So, staying consistent, kind of being all in and fading somebody can be extremely profitable. Okay, Patrick, you've got 4 matchups. Let's start with the Ricky Fowler one over Shane Lowry.
Yeah, I'm buying Ricky Fowler. I bought him at the Farmers Insurance. I think that was probably the week to buy in on him just because if you're betting from an outright perspective, that field kind of fell off a cliff right after the top guys. This week, I think it's going to be a bit tougher for him. But I do like him in this matchup at -102 over Shane Lowry. Ricky's been playing great over his last 6 starts. And for Lowry, after his BMW PGA Championship win over on the DP World Tour, his form has been pretty concerning, and the putter long-term has been pretty bad, to tell you the truth. So I do like that number on Ricky. And then Emiliano Grillo over Russell Knox. They're kind of the same players with kind of the same form, but Grillo does have that putting upside. He hasn't flashed it yet this season, but kind of to end 2022, he was great with the putter. So if that comes to life, I think you're getting a bargain on this one. And then Bo Hossler over Kevin Kisner is kind of just a bet on one guy who's playing well and one guy who isn't. So sometimes it can be as simple as that. So I do like that number at -120. And then finally, Xander Schauffele -120 over Max Homa. His last 6 starts after the summer heater he went on when he won back-to-back, T13, T3, 4th, T9, 4th, T3. Last 2 years here, he probably should have won both tournaments, to tell you the truth. He had the Brooks Koepka incident. And then last year, he was in the mix with Thigala, and he kind of faded at the final round as well. And Max Homa, I mean, there aren't like many more nice things I can say about that guy, but coming off an emotional win, he's doing a lot of media this week. He has Netflix cameras following him. I understand he's played well. It's a home game for him. He's hosting friends and family. I think that's just enough for me to pick Xander -120 over him this week.
So Jake the Snake is on the ones and twos. Jake, if you could clip that and tag Max Homa, that Patrick hates Max Homa this week in particular, that'd be great. Maybe we'll generate some Twitter controversy courtesy of Patrick McDonald. Okay, there's a couple picks I really like here from you, Patrick. I mean, from both of you really, but there's a guy I'm kind of focused on in DFS that I think is an interesting pivot, and it is Emiliano Grillo. I think it's 6,700. Listen, a lot of people are going to play Hayden Buckley at 6,800 if they dip down into that 6K range, and I totally get that. Johnny Vegas is interesting because his trajectory is kind of moving on up, if you will. But I think nobody's really going to play Grillo, and I think he's an interesting pivot off of those guys. Even Martin Laird is in the conversation more than Grillo at this point, I think. And the other one I really like there, and this kind of leads me into one of my three matchups, it's Ricky Fowler. You have Ricky Fowler over Shane Lowry. That's fine. I like that. I like mine a little bit better over at DraftKings only because I'd prefer to fade Russell Henley, only because I don't exactly know where the state of Shane Lowry's game is. But Patrick, to your point, hasn't looked very good. But give me Ricky Fowler. I love how hot he is. I mean, listen, the approach is back. We know he can get hot with the putter. He's got great experience here, which includes an outright. So I love that over Henley. Tom Kim over Taylor Montgomery. You guys know that if you watch this show, you know I faded Taylor Montgomery recently, and it came in a head-to-head matchup. And I like it again here. Tom Kim, listen, he has no experience here. I don't believe Taylor Montgomery does either. And I just think from a ball striking standpoint, Tom Kim wins this one easily. Now, from a putting standpoint, it's a different story, but Tom Kim can get hot there as well. So I like Tom Kim over Taylor Montgomery. Chris Kirk over Scott Stallings. I think we see with Scott Stallings that, like, okay, he played pretty well last week. I don't know that he's going to be popular this week, but certainly Chris Kirk isn't going to be super popular in the betting markets. But I like how Chris Kirk is playing. If you look at the finishing positions and the metrics, it looks really good. And oh, by the way, last year around this time, Chris Kirk was really humming. He was really playing well. Good experience here. So I think this is a sneaky play with a couple kind of boring names. I think Chris Kirk minus 120 over Scott Stallings has pretty tremendous value. So those are my head-to-heads. Listen, we always tell you, listen to the information that we give you on this show, and you don't have to play everything. You can play some of these, the ones you like, the ones you don't like. If you agree that you want to fade Hovland, and it certainly makes sense, then you're definitely jumping on ECs. If you don't want to do that, then maybe you go over to one of mine or several of Patrick's, whatever you want to do. But we're trying to give you the information to give you the knowledge to say yay or nay on some of these bets. But we certainly back every single bet that we put out here. Now we got to get to a different market, right? Let's do top 20s, top 10s. Sometimes we give you top fives. I know Coach is big on doing that. And for the record, if you're looking for Coach, he's at the Super Bowl, which we said at the front end of the show. If you're new to the chat right now, hit the like button. We appreciate the support. Let's get to that top 20 market. Let's put the board up there. We've got a few guys to talk about. And I know, EC, you've got a couple guys in the top 10 market to talk about. So we're going to start with you yet again. I know Patrick usually skips out on the top 20 market because that's not where he's profitable. He's profitable where he just was in the head-to-head market and in some of the outright plays that we're going to give you in a second. So, EC, I've got a few, but you've got 3 in the top 20 market, 2 in the top 10 market. Let's get it started.
All right. Well, we're going to start with Cam Young. As I mentioned, he was 26th here last year, coming off a second last week. In his last 5 starts, a third, a 7th, a second, and a 13th. So 4 out of his last 5 have been in the top 20. So you're getting plus money. Okay, sounds good to me. Then you're looking at the guy who's the ultimate horse for the course here, Hideki Matsuyama. Now, last year he finished 8th, and you're like, well, that's fine. But his first 4 times at TPC Scottsdale, it was 4th, 2nd, 1st, 1st. He's also gone 15th, 16th, and 42nd in addition to a withdraw. I mean, if he finishes and he makes it through all 72 holes, I feel pretty confident that Hideki Matsuyama is going to be up there with 5 top 10 finishes and 2 wins thus far at TPC Scottsdale. And then Alex Noren, who I mentioned in the last segment, I'll tell you what, I think he's a guy that's ready to break through. 6th here last year, and he's absolutely been on a heater. He just doesn't play very often, but when he does play, his last 3 starts, 4th, 2nd, and 5th overseas. I feel like Alex Noren is a good bet at plus 250 for a top 20. I love that. Now, when it comes to the top 10 market, now, Colin Morikawa, first of all, is like dead to me as far as the outright market because I had him at the Tournament of Champions, and he blows a 6-shot lead, and I was literally devastated when that happened. I had a nice ticket on Morikawa, so he's dead to me. Xander Schauffele at this tournament was very close to being dead to me, but we're giving it one more shot because of what he did in 2021 when he hit it in the drink on 17. All he had to do is just hit a 3-wood, hit a wedge, make a birdie, you tie, you go to a playoff. Nope, he choked. He's a different golfer since then, but he's so consistent. Now that he's broken through last summer, but he's so consistent here. All 5 times he's played here, it's been a top 20, including second and third in the last 2 years. So I feel like a top 10 at plus money is good value there. And then JT. Now, Patrick, we've talked about it. I know you're not a fan. 3 of the last 4 years, 3rd, 13th, and 8th. He's my pick to win. Sorry, I know I'm getting ahead of myself. I love plus, what do I have it there? Plus 240 is a top 10. Love it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to get your groove back and your name is JT, this is probably where it's going to happen. So I certainly don't mind that play. I love the Xander play. And I think Alex Noren is really interesting. I'll note that, Mike McClure is still in the chat. Thank you for being in there. He dropped his player pool, but he also mentioned after he dropped the initial, I believe it was 10 players, he mentioned that Alex Noren was going to be in some of his lineups as well. And I think he's a pretty sneaky play and a good course fit here as well. My top 20s, we'll go over them again, but very lightly because we've already talked about these guys. Collin Morikawa at minus 110. Listen, obviously I want to take plus money when it comes to the top 20 market, but it's so elite at the top, and Collin Morikawa is so elite. I do think he top 20s. If recent history is any indication, he's likely going to be top 10 here. But I think minus 110 is a very fair number in the top 20 market. Sung J M at plus 110. Really like him in this tournament. I also think in the betting market, he's going just slightly under the radar. Just not a guy, and even in DFS, not a guy people are really wanting to click as much, even though his price is super favorable. So he'll get some ownership. But I like his history here. I like his game for this course. I just, Sung J, I'm going to be all over in the betting and DFS market. And then Shane Lowry. Listen, I don't want to take Shane Lowry outright. Well, I do because his number is so long. But the more realistic play to me, if Shane Lowry gets some semblance of his game going at the Phoenix Open, he's probably going to top 20 this thing because he's top 20 talent in this tournament. So at plus 260, I think that's a great number. Listen, we'll get to the outrights in a second. We all want to shoot, the long bomb, right? We all want to throw the Hail Mary and cash in. And I like Shane Lowry at 70 or 80 to 1, wherever you can get him. But again, we got to look at like what's realistic here, or at least more realistic. And it's probably more realistic, obviously, that he's going to end up in the top 20 market. And because his odds are so long, the top 20 market, we're getting some value with Shane Lowry. But listen, we've teased it enough. We've talked about the outrights, but we haven't actually given our outrights. So WM Phoenix Open, these are fun bets, but they come in, right? Just 2 weeks ago, Patrick only had one outright to give, and it was Max Homa, and it came in. I think that day I gave 3 outrights, or on that show, I gave 3 outrights, and Max Homa was one of them. So we hit these things. I encourage everybody to maybe hold some back for live betting purposes because there's usually some value within the tournament. But let's throw up that board because, Patrick, I'll start with you. You don't have one guy, but you have 2 guys. You're always just kind of honed in on a couple of guys at the very most. And I love that about you because to me, it's a sign of very high confidence. Even in the outright market, you can be high confidence, right? Because you just hit one. So who do you like?
I want to circle back to EC saying every golfer is dead to him. I mean, if he's on this show another time, we might not have a PGA Tour at all. All these guys are going to be gone. Xander,
right.
Gone. Hovland, gone. Morikawa, smell you later.
Don't get me started on Shane Lowry, by the way. I'm not even going to go there. He's also on my list.
Wow. So his lineup's going to be like Hank Lebioda, like in a couple of weeks, Kyle Stanley, and I don't know, like Brendan Steele or something.
But I'm gonna kick mine off with the guy you just talked about, Sung JM at 2,800. Second at approach at Torrey Pines. He was only behind Max Homa in that respect, and he is the best par 5 player in this field over the last 6 months. And you got to get after those 3 holes in particular, I believe. And I have faith that Sung Jae will be able to. He has a nice history here. He's a winner in the desert, like Eric said. So I really like that going for him. And then Tom Kim, the most recent winner in the Las Vegas desert. I know you said he doesn't have any experience here, but he does on his bag. Joe Scovrin, Ricky Fowler's old caddy. He's the bag man for Tom Kim. He'll be able to kind of navigate him around this golf course, I believe. And you could almost say that Tom Kim's like the cool Webb Simpson. I think that's a decent comparison. Webb Simpson obviously won here. He's extremely accurate off the tee. He's top in approach over the last 6 months. Top 5 from 150, 175. That's a big bucket of approach shots this week. Top 5 in opportunities gained. So I love Tom Kim this week. I know it will be a big ask, I think, with the designated event, all the big boys, but he acquitted himself quite nicely at the Tournament of Champions alongside those guys. So I like those 2 South Korean brothers.
Patrick, do you think, and I'm taking a ride down Narrative Street, won't you join me? Do you think Tom Kim is really going to embrace this atmosphere? Because I think he's going to really revel in the Phoenix Open atmosphere, which, could help him. I mean, there's no metrics we can apply to that, but are you even taking that into account, golfers that may embrace this and just really ride the energy of the tournament?
It was definitely an added bonus, I think. I mean, we all saw him at the President's Cup, I Can't Hear You, pumping up the crowd, raising the roof. And he did the same at the American Express, which wasn't really a big field or audience. And he's still pumping up the crowd. So he'll love it. I'm a little concerned maybe the first day that the adrenaline will be pumping and he'll launch one like into the grandstands, hit a home run. But after that, he'll be able to hone it in and dial it up.
The chat is electric right now. AB has joined the chat. We got Mike McClure in there. This is pretty excellent stuff going on in the chat. Everybody, if you haven't already hit the like button, hit that for me. But EC, I want you to hit me with your 3 outrights for the WM Phoenix Open.
Well, see, I actually ended up betting 7 outrights beforehand because I got a little crazy because I didn't think about what you had mentioned earlier. The in-play market at this tournament especially is very profitable. So a few years ago, I got Webb Simpson after the first day when he shot +1, I believe, at 90-1. And he ends up shooting, 62 on Saturday and wins in a playoff over Finau. That was 2020. And then 2022, Scotty Scheffler, it's pretty much the same thing, was not really in the picture until Saturday, goes and shoots like 63, 64, something like that, and got himself back into contention, then won in a playoff over Cantlay. So I got a little out of control, but my favorite 3 bets that I have, I don't know why I'm doing this again to myself with Schauffele. I should have learned better a couple of years ago. Just as long as he puts away the driver on 17 on Sunday, maybe just hits a 3-wood. Hopefully he learns from his mistake. I don't love the short price, but I still went there anyways. I love JT. I know we talked about his full field lack of prowess lately. He loves this tournament. He plays well out here. And JT's the kind of guy that form doesn't really matter with him. Sometimes he'll just pop. I think we saw it at the Players the other year where he just kind of came out of nowhere and popped for a win, didn't really have form, if my memory serves me correct, and I could be wrong there. And then I'm going back to Matsuyama, who has just been phenomenal here. Now, he hasn't won here in, 6-7 years, but 2 wins. I mean, he loves this course. And this, there's a correlation between major championships and major championship success and Phoenix Open success. And these are 3 guys. I mean, JT, we saw win the PGA last year. Xander is seemingly always in it at the U.S. Open. And Hideki has had success at the U.S. Open and the Masters. So obviously, I'm rolling with these 3 as my top 3 plays. I also threw in your boy, Tony Finau, both of your guys, Tony Finau, who you guys are fading in DFS. I know he has a bad course history here, but he's another guy that I'm taking a sprinkle on at his price here in the desert.
And I think Snake might have missed your bets on Rahm and Rory as well.
I do not know. No, hey, wait a second. I am fading Rahm and Rory. I'm fading them. No. Come on now. I'm
sorry,
going down
my
the board.
mistake, my
okay,
mistake.
yeah, just checking. Okay.
That is fantastic. And by the way, EC, listen, all 3 of those guys have the pedigree to win a tournament like this, and obviously have done really well here as well. So I don't have any issue with any of those plays, especially Hideki. We recently caught him at 40-1, and I told everybody on this very show, if Hideki's going to be 40-1, I'm going to bet him. And 35-1 is really, frankly, in the same ballpark as 40-1. It's a pretty big number on Hideki, who again has had some good go of it here. My 4 outrights, we've talked about them. Colin Morikawa at +1,800. Listen, I didn't get the best number here, but this is what the number is now. So I want to make sure that I'm not giving like a 4-day-old number. So you could have maybe gotten him at +2,500, +2,200, whatever it was, but +1,800, maybe +1,600. It's starting to get a little low there, but I do like Colin Morikawa to finally cash in on some of these tournaments where he probably should have won. Tom Kim at 30-1. To me, Tom Kim 30-1 or longer is pretty close to an auto bet unless I see otherwise. And what otherwise really means is Tom Kim having a stretch where he becomes human and not an actual robot, which I think he is. Sam Burns at 45-1. I don't really love Sam Burns. His history isn't very good here, but it's 45-1. And the upside for Sam Burns is pretty immense. So I'm willing to forego the history and just ignore it when I get a guy who I know can win at 45-1. It's almost like the same conversation as Hideki with sort of different context, obviously. Shane Lowry at 70-1. I can't imagine looking away from a Shane Lowry 70 or 80-1. It's just crazy. So I understand We don't know where his form is. We haven't seen him in a while on the PGA Tour, but 70-1 is such a big number. I'm willing to sprinkle. I'm willing to speculate there. Certainly not a huge play for me by any means. Those are our outrights, and we've got one thing left to do, and that's the really fun stuff, right? We've got some long shot plays to give. A lot of it is first round leader oriented. That's what we're going to do on this show a lot. We're going to give some outrights that are long shots, of course, but we're going to give some first round leaders because that's fun. That makes for a very fun Thursday, or maybe you want to turn these over into showdown plays. If you're playing DFS, I think these can, at least my picks, I can speak for them. I think they double for showdown plays in large part. So let's start with our long shot plays. And Patrick, I'm going to kick it right back to you. You've got some first round leaders and a long shot winner. So let's start with the long shot winner and then get to your first round leaders.
Yeah, EC is really high on this guy. And, given how many picks he's given out, it was inevitable we were going to cross paths. So I imagine it happens at 110-1. But JT Poston, he talked his tires off about him. T6 at the American Express. He consistently gains off the tee. The irons are hot, and we all know what he can do on the greens. And EC talked about major championships, but I look kind of towards last year's Travelers Championship. You look at that leaderboard, Thagala, Xander, Cantlay, Scheffler was in the mix as well. JT Poston, T2, really quietly went on to win the next week at the John Deere. So I look at that leaderboard almost as maybe some crossover there. And then Sam Burns, you talked about him. I don't have enough faith in him over 4 rounds from tee to green. He's been pretty wild, pretty poor, but we know what he can do with the putter. It's pretty ridiculous sometimes. So for 1 round, I think he can get it going. I like Ricky Fowler again at 70-1. Great course history. Irons are hot. The new putter seems to be coming around. Poston at 90-1. And then Adam Hadwin, the Desert Fox, as Greg Ducharme would say, made 7 straight cuts here. He's a local guy. Irons, putter, accurate off the tee. I think he's an ideal first-round leader candidate.
Absolutely love it. Love some of the. Listen, Ricky Fowler almost made my list, so he was on the cutting room floor. I obviously love JT Poston for all the reasons both you and EC have given. EC, you've got 5 first-round leaders to discuss. Obviously, we can see it right here. One of them is JT Poston, but let's talk about your first-round leaders at the WM Phoenix Open.
Yeah, just a sprinkle on these. Now, last year, as I was telling you guys before the show, the only first-round leader bet I've ever hit in my life was last year with our guy TPC Lee. That's KH Lee, who I'm surprised we haven't mentioned in 37 minutes on this show yet, because this guy thrives at all the TPC courses. It was 70-1 last year. I got him at 80-1 this year. Let's take a little sprinkle here and give this a shot. Throwing darts against the wall. Cam Young, if he stays hot, doesn't have jet lag, 35-1, fine with me. Alex Noren, if he remembers how to play golf after not playing in a while, I'll take a shot at 75-1. And then Hadwin loves it out west here, and JT Poston for the reasons that we said. Just a little bit of a sprinkle. I mean, these long shot stuff, this is like Patrick's and your specialty. I'm just trying to fit in here and throw some darts at the wall. So we'll take a shot here with these 5 guys.
It's funny you mentioned that because it is my specialty, kind of. So last year around this time is when I hit an amazing run of first-round leaders. And there was another show I was doing, and we had a bit at the end of our show. It's like, oh, you want to put all your money on the first-round leader market. Again, it was a bit, right? Because, Eric, you're right. You want to bet these light. These are sprinkle bets. These are more fun bets than anything. But I went on such a run that the bit turned into, like, reality where people were actually betting legitimate money because it was coming in every time. And then, of course, the wheels fell off, right? You can't sustain like a first-round leader run like I was on. But I will say this, for whatever it's worth, this time last year is when that run was happening. So, take that for whatever it's worth, which frankly probably isn't much. Again, these are fun bets. They're long. We call this the long shot segment for a reason. With that said, I took some guys with shorter odds than I normally do because this field is so elite at the top. So let's talk about Colin Morikawa at plus 2,800, Xander Schauffele at plus 3,500, Sung Jae Im and Max Homa at 40-1, plus 4,000 each, and then Keith Mitchell at plus 6,500. These are all guys that are pretty infamous, especially recently, with having spike performances, having amazing rounds, whether it's in the first round or any other round. I mean, because you don't necessarily need to look at just guys who are good in the first round. All of these guys have the upside to just be big time scorers and just big time for your DFS and your betting first round leader play. So I'm a big fan of these picks, and I think Keith Mitchell is really the only sort of relative long shot, but we know he can put it together. If you want to go super long shot, if you want to go out of control long shot, Johnny Vegas is 125-1 to be the first round leader. And again, he's kind of on an upward trajectory. So I like what he has been doing recently in a small sample size coming off shoulder surgery. So somebody to consider there. And that's going to do it for our long shots. Wow, what a show. Guys, I don't even know what to say. Like, I think I was 60% of what Coach is as a host, right, guys? And that's a W for me, right, Patrick?
Don't sell yourself short there, Sia. I'd get you close to 100%. You killed it, knocked it out of the park. Forget about it. Come on.
So you know what I did there? It's a fancy lawyer trick. I made you say it instead of me, so that I don't have to take ownership of potentially being somewhere in the neighborhood of Coach as a host. EC, what did you think? How did we do today?
Coach who?
Flip it.
As long as he doesn't
tag it.
Just don't tell him I said that.
Clip
Just don't
that.
tell him I said that. Okay, no,
well.
Coach is great. You did a great job, though. See, it's great to be on with you guys. It should be a great tournament. I'm going to be out there tomorrow with our first round leaders. I'm taking all of your bets. We're going to throw them out there. The one thing I'm not going to play, hole-in-one props. I was actually looking at those earlier this week. So if you bet $50 on every guy on the board, you make money if two guys get a hole-in-one in the tournament. I don't know how often it hits. There were 2 on 16 last year, Sam Ryder and Carlos Ortiz. So if you just have some extra money around and want to throw $1 on every guy to get a hole-in-one, you can make money if 2 guys do it the entire tournament. That's my random little factoid for you.
EC is quite literally betting on every single player in the tournament.
Literally every single guy. I'm serious. That's the way to do it. You got to bet every single guy to do it.
You would be my hero if you made that bet across the full field. That would be absolutely amazing. EC, thank you for coming on to the show. And obviously, we're going to have you back. Absolutely love the insight. Love what you do for SportsLine. Everybody, you can follow EC at Cohen's Corner AZ. But obviously, you can follow him at SportsLine too, one of our great cappers. Guys, I think that's, as Coach likes to say, I think that's all the damage we can do today. So there's something I've been kind of wanting to do that I've never had the chance to do. You've got your marching orders. Let's take all of these tickets straight to the pay window for Eric Cohen, EC, for Patrick McDonald at Amateur Status, and for myself and Jake the Snake on the 1s and 2s. This has been the Early Wedge, and we'll see you next time.